Hey everyone, how's everyone doing?
Good.
All right.
You want the light on or off?
What light? Well, I'm going to read, so I need a little light. Why? You want to turn it off?
Did you want it on?
Oh, it doesn't matter. Whatever's better. I get a nice diffraction effect. That's cool. Okay, my name's Alex Stone, and oh yeah, whoa, hi. This is the biggest I've ever seen it. I just wrote a book. It doesn't come out till next June, but it's called Fooling Houdini, a bunch of stuff. And magicians, mentalists, math geeks, and the hidden powers of the mind. So it's about, the book is about the world of magic and magicians, this very bizarre subculture of people. Its underlying connections to various aspects of science, psychology, neuroscience, behavioral economics, math, physics, but also things like gambling and crime. And it's also my own sort of personal story of my obsession with magic, which began when I was 5 and is still going strong. Which actually, the way I tell it is that I didn't actually get really serious until I was in my late 20s, but that's a little, I know how embarrassing that sounds. And it's sort of a story, a coming of age tale of my own journey from kind of a sort of a not so great magician to try to become an expert. And in the process, an intellectual quest to try and understand magic and its ties to science. And a lot of people don't think of magic and science as sort of related, but the weird thing about it is that behind almost every magic trick, there's some scientific principle involved. And even perhaps more astounding is that scientists are now using magic, from neuroscience to mathematicians. They're using actual magic tricks and magicians to study as a window into the human mind and to learn about the mysteries of perception, to derive new mathematical results. I'm actually reviewing a book right now written by this very famous mathematician on math and magic and how there are all these open questions in pure math that involve magic tricks. So it's a very bizarre world filled with eccentric and often brilliant people, and it's some very beautiful ideas there. So let's just do a trick, though, to break it up a bit, all right? Yeah. Anybody want to volunteer? Anybody? Yeah, you want to volunteer? What's your name? Colleen. Colleen. Everyone give Colleen a hand. Come on up. Colleen, these cards that look mixed up to you, they look random, mixed. Everyone see? Okay. Here, just give them a cut. Okay. Just give them a cut, Colleen. Yeah, just a straight cut is fine, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know it's not the best surface. Okay. Okay. All right, Colleen. Mm-hmm. You've probably seen tricks where magicians have, you like pick a card, right? That's old, that's old. That's out. We're not going to do that today. I just want you to think of a card. Don't say it out loud, just think of it. Okay, you got it? Yeah. All right, let's see if this. This doesn't always work, so just I think, let me just, Colleen, why don't you tell everyone what it is so that they can all enjoy?
I was thinking of the Jack of Diamonds.
The Jack of Diamonds. Okay, Colleen, will you do me a favor? Just cut the deck in half, maybe a little more.
Yeah, okay. I just sort of did this. Do you want me to shuffle?
No, just cut, take up about a little more than half the cards. A little more than half, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now that's not the Jack of Diamonds, right?
No.
Now you cut the deck, we shuffled. I didn't do anything, right?
Yeah.
This is where you cut to.
Yeah.
Okay, I want you to turn over, and you said the Jack of Clubs?
Diamonds.
Diamonds. That's the card that you cut to. I didn't, okay, just turn over the card that you cut to and show it to everyone. Oh. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Colleen, thank you. All right, there you go, magic. Yeah, well, so that trick is not well known. It's an underground trick based on the teachings of this very famous magician by the name of Juan Tamariz, who's unknown of here, but in Spain he's a big guy, and he's head of the Madrid school. So magic has schools, a lot of schools. It's kind of like the art world, like Barbizon or Antwerp, you know, where they have these schools with masters and apprentices, and they're kind of like, they're institutions, but they're also like schools of thought, you know. And so people study at these schools, and then they export their teachings to other places. And probably my favorite magician in the world is this guy Juan Tamariz, who was the student of a very famous Spanish magician named Arturo de Ascanio, who was a Spanish magistrate who won the Magic Olympics, and then Juan Tamariz was his student, who also won the Magic Olympics, and he's just he's this guy who fools all the magicians. A lot of people think like magicians aren't easy to fool, but the truth is that, well, which is true, they aren't in general, but magicians are constantly coming up with new ways to fool each other, and that drives a lot of evolution in the art of magic. And one of the things that I try and convey in this book is that, a lot of people tend to think magic is sort of this staid vaudeville era kind of thing, but actually it's an incredibly vibrant, dynamic world, and like literally a week does not go by where somebody doesn't come up with a new trick that just fools everyone. I was just looking online, this guy, one of the Madrid School guys, this new guy, a younger guy, just came out with an 8-hour DVD set of all new card material. And he's been presenting it at the conventions, at the lectures, and he just murders everyone. Just no one has any idea how he does it. And it's really cool. In fact, I don't know if we'll get to it, but one of the stories I tell in this chapter later on is about this famous Swedish magician by the name of Lennart Green. He was a doctor. And he would mess around with cards late at night in the ward wherever he was working in some small town in Sweden. And one day he entered the Magic Olympics, and he did this very bizarre card routine that looked very clumsy, and it was just like the cards were all over the place, very chaotic. But then everything ends up in like perfect order at the end. And the judges, who were all expert magicians, the best magicians in the world, disqualified him because they said that what he was doing was impossible without a trick deck and without having like plants in the audience, stooges as they're called. They accused him of using stooges to shuffle the cards for him and of using a trick deck. Truth is, he hadn't done any of this. He had just invented this entirely new machinery of sleight of hand that no one had ever thought of before. So he comes back 3 years later, after having established himself a bit more, does the same routine, but then hands out allows the deck to be shuffled and inspected by the judges, and he just wins. He routs all his opponents, hands down. He wins, and now he's this legend who's completely shattered long-held assumptions about what was possible. Just using sleight of hand and math and just dexterity and ingenuity and stuff like that. So that's constantly happening in magic. And that's one of the reasons I'm still very much interested in it. And also, as I allude to, and later on the book has much more science in it, but it's like, the greatest card cheat, for example, in the world is a guy who's blind. His name's Richard Turner. He does it all by touch. So one of the things I think about, I ask in the book is like, how much, like how powerful is our sense of touch? Because we don't tend to really think about it much. And it turns out that there's this whole literature on how not only is touch a very powerful, it's our first sense to develop, it's the scaffolding to our world, it's the basic bond between the mother and the infant. But it actually turns out this new body of literature that just came out in the last 5 or 6 years, it actually turns out that touch can communicate these various nuances of emotion, and that like a very brief touch on an arm of a stranger can communicate anger and fear and love and disgust. And it turns out to be this very differentiated, the tactile channel as they call it, turns out to be a very differentiated system. And touch can actually have these very interesting sort of subconscious effects on how we, our willingness to part with cash, and our, how we treat other people and how we view other people. There's these studies where they've shown that like holding a warm drink actually makes us more warm-hearted and more generous. And this is sort of a subset of this field called embodied cognition, which tends to view abstract concepts as sort of grounded in the flesh. And so there's all these neat ways that I found myself in researching this stuff, getting into all these science ideas. I have a whole chapter on mathematics, which is actually, Amanda studies at Columbia, and I was there too. And there's a very famous professor there. I don't know how many of you have ever heard about the famous 7 shuffles paper? So not many people have heard of it. It's not that famous. Famous is famous among people who are obsessed with mathematics and magic. So no one. 4 people. They're very beautiful mathematics, and I'm going to show you, maybe I'll read a little bit more and then show you one last trick that's actually based in some very gorgeous math. It's actually, you can look at a deck of cards and find all these amazing theorems, and actually it's rooted in the same mathematics. It's the basis for the standard model in physics, which is it's like the periodic table of physics, and it's essentially the great model of all the forces and particles in the universe. It's the basic, arguably the greatest scientific achievement of all time for its sheer prognostic power and breadth and scope and funny terminology too, because there are these things called hadrons. There's like a particle physics gives me a hadron T-shirt. Have you ever seen that? No? Okay. Anyway, so there's, and you can find all this, and you can find all this in a deck of cards. If you look at a deck of cards, there's this beautiful symbolism too. Like there's a red and black cards symbolizing night and day. There's 4 suits for the 4 seasons. There's 12, 12, 12 cards in each suit, or no, there are 13 cards. There's 12 court cards, sorry. 12 court cards, which symbolize like the 12 months of the year. There's 13 cards in each suit. Those are the 13 lunar cycles. There's 52 cards in a deck for the weeks in the year. And if you add up all the values of the cards, you get, plus a joker, you get 365, which is kind of cool. These guys at Columbia proved that if you want to shuffle a deck, you have to shuffle roughly 7 times to truly randomize a deck, which is way more than anyone ever suspected. And it's very bizarre. What they found was that the way it works is it's like shuffling twice isn't much better than once, or 4 times isn't much better than 2 times. It's very nonlinear, so you shuffle and you don't really get much benefit. The order, the chaos, or whatever, the randomness of the deck is kind of just a peak, like just like that. And then right around 7, it just plummets, and the randomness just kind of crystallizes. And then you don't, after 7, you don't really get much benefit after that. And it turns out there's all these phenomena that kind of, like drug companies worry about this. You know, when they're mixing drugs, they don't want one person to get, you know, all the antihistamine and one person to get all the painkiller. So they have to, but they mix too much, it denatures the chemical. So there's these optimal mixing algorithms that they use. And you know, if you knead bread dough, you kind of see the same thing. Like if you put in some swirls or something, you'll see that, you know, it kind of swirls, 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 and then all of a sudden it kind of very quickly homogenizes. So it turns out that there's this phenomena you see all over the place. And this was an outgrowth of work that was done at Bell Labs when the phone company was interested in modeling how information is transmitted across noisy phone lines. And they used actually one of the earliest, colleague of, I don't know how many people have heard of Claude Shannon, the founder of information theory. A colleague of his that actually came up with a model for how information is transmitted using a deck of cards, because you can use a card to transmit information, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so these are just some of the ideas. I'm kind of just throwing them out, you know, but we're pastiche now. But yeah.
Just so we make sure we have time for the Occupy Wall Street folks, can we do some more, like another trick?
Mm-hmm.
And then we do some question and answer?
Yeah, okay, great, no problem. Okay. I'll do one more trick. So on the subject of using cards to communicate information and how cards are these very strange, kind of almost, when you start to really study them, they start to actually kind of feel like cosmic instruments. So actually, I'm going to use a different deck because this one, I'll show you why in a minute. This one has, has everyone heard of a marked deck? You know, like you've heard of a marked deck? Well, this deck has like these weird markings on the side. Can you see? Everyone see? It might be a little tough, but they don't look like anything right now. They're just like hieroglyphs. Kind of like the deck, they're like random, no order. But the weird thing about this deck is that these markings are kind of like an ink blot, like a Rorschach test. They can become whatever your imagination projects onto them. And could you mind coming up here for a second? Everyone give Catherine, right? A hand. This is Catherine. We spoke earlier, and the reason why she's up here, you can tell me, but I had her think of a name, right? Mm-hmm. Earlier on, so she's thinking of a name of someone. Now, she didn't tell me, she didn't tell anyone. I tried to guess it, but had no luck. I couldn't even guess who, I was terrible at it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Yeah, it's bad. Really bad, yeah. Really bad. But she's going to help us. I'm going to use the cards to figure it out, these very weird cosmic instruments to try and figure it out. But before I do the name, I want to kind of show you how it works. So actually, maybe, let's see, let have one more volunteer so we can sort of figure out how it works. Or I show you, kind of demonstrate how it works. I'll tell you what, do you mind standing up? Sure. Just keep concentrating. I'm going to shuffle the cards again. Is it starting to come through a bit more now?
Yeah.
It says, as far as I can tell, it says 8 of hearts. It says was that the card that you picked?
Yeah.
It says it twice. That's one for the red cards and one for the black cards, or for day and night. Let's see if we can't make it even clearer. Let's try shuffling one more time, okay? Watch carefully. That's weird, right?
That's weird.
Was that?
Very good.
Thank you. That was it, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. But wait. So you were thinking of a card, but you had this name in your head, right? And it was someone that was like important to you, right? A person who you haven't told me, you haven't told anybody. No one except you knows who this person is. For the first time now, I just want you to say it out loud, really loudly.
Are you sure?
I'm totally sure.
Peter. Peter?
Louder.
Peter.
Okay, watch. Peter? Who was Peter? Who was Peter?
He's my boyfriend.
Oh my God, Peter. All right, Peter. All right, thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for the dollar. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, all right. All right. Thank you very much. So that's. All right. So any questions? So I will tell you that this trick is based on a very, very elegant mathematical principle that's related to group theory. And it has to do with the nature of card shuffling and the permutations that cards go through when you shuffle. And if you really want to know more about it, then, I don't know, email me or something, and I'll give you a personal lesson. It's not easy to do. It does require a very advanced technique that takes a while to learn. But the essence of it is a mathematical principle, a permutation in group theory, which is, like I said, the basis of group theory is a mathematical language of symmetry. And nature loves symmetry almost as much as she abhors a vacuum. So it's very important to physics, to a lot of things, to chemistry, biology. So yeah.
So in another field, I was talking to someone about skateboarding, and they said that it's changing so quickly that the new people are better than the masters. I'm not a skateboarder, so I don't really know. Is that in Magic too?
You know, in Magic, it's hard to say who's better than someone else, because there's for one, there's so many different types of Magic that it's become very specialized. But it's certainly true that there is a 16-year-old kid at the Magic store who can fool like any professional magician, like fool the pants, like just fry the shit out of him, and yes, I mean, also with the internet now, kids are sharing, like close-up Magic. I should have said this earlier, but there's lots of different types of Magic. The Magic that I'm most interested in is really about sleight of hand and cards. There's also the sawing people in half. That Magic sort of, I mean, roughly speaking, is harder to get at because it's expensive. But card Magic and coin Magic, stuff like that, is very cheap. So there's a lot of people doing it now, and it's a growing world. So there's so many kids that are involved in it, and some of them are just so creative that they really are coming up with all this new stuff. You could say that in a way, technique has evolved. Like the trick that I just showed you. 50 years ago, it was really thought impossible. Like people didn't think you could actually do that trick. And then these guys came along, one of whom was a computer scientist, and figured out the mechanics of the moves and stuff like that. Now it's the kind of thing that, while difficult, most sleight of hand experts can do. So it's true that technique is constantly advancing. So stuff that now like a 16-year-old kid can do, 20 years ago, the best people in the world couldn't. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that way. So that's a good question. Thanks.
So I'm a fan of a somewhat famous mentalist, Darren Brown.
Sure, the British guy. Yeah, not so well known here, but he's a god in England.
Right.
Yeah.
So he makes a lot of his tricks look like hypnotists, hypnotics, and mentalism.
Sure.
What that means.
Yeah.
What I can't figure out is if most of it actually is that or sleight of hand, and I wanted to hear what.
Never trust a magician, honestly. Never, except me. I'm not lying to you. But why would I lie to you? No, I mean, when I say it's actually based in math, it really is based in math. But you really do have to be careful because, yes, I mean, a lot of that is patter. A lot of that is.
You don't think that anyone's doing real tricks that are actually manipulating people's minds?
Well, no, they are, but probably not in the way that they tell you they are. That's not. I mean, look, magicians. Let me give you an example. Like magicians, and we exploit this all the time, are very good at implanting false memories in people. Now, there's a host of studies that show that the mere act of imagining an event is enough to create a false memory of it. They did a study where they found that 61% of college students thought that they'd seen the first plane hit the World Trade Center. No one saw it because it wasn't on TV. No one saw that. A few people saw that, but not many. 61% of college students thought they saw it because they imagined it and they saw the second one. And they've done lots of studies on this. They've been able to implant false memories of childhood accidents and abuse, and they've shown people scenes of pictures, and cars have changed colors, and Mickey Mouse changed into Minnie Mouse, and this has really called into question eyewitness testimony. Some people now think that up to 90% of eyewitness testimony is flawed because of false memory syndrome. So anyway, magicians have been exploiting this technique forever, and So that's pretty strong, I think. Like, and the magicians will convince you that you shuffled the cards when you didn't. They'll convince you that a choice you made was a free choice. They'll say things. Oh, would it be impressive if I could do this without touching the cards, when they actually touch the cards, so that later on you think they never did. And anyone, even a hobbyist, knows that people remember all kinds of crazy stuff when they think about magic, when they try to remember magic tricks, because memory is associative, and when you're seeing a magic trick, it doesn't make sense to begin with. So you make all kinds of wrong associations. And what happens is, it kind of cuts both ways. Is like, people will walk up to me and say, oh, I saw this trick once where the guy made the card and it was like flipping around and then it burst into doves. And I'll know roughly what trick they're talking about, but they'll have misremembered it in such a way that makes it almost impossible. So that's one form of mind manipulation. Now, in terms of like hypnosis and like the NLP and all that stuff, some of that stuff I'm not an expert in. I would say a lot of that stuff might just be patter. But but misdirection is a form of manipulating people. And it really is a way, people think that misdirection is a way of, like, look over there and then do something, but it's not. It's actually a way of manipulating a person's focus. And look, how many people have seen like the gorilla video, the famous gorilla? Right, so I actually did an experiment, a similar type of experiment with a psychologist at the New School, where we brought people in and I showed them a magic trick and I stole their watches. And we did it for 15 people, and out of the 15 people, 13 people didn't notice that I stolen their watch. And it's just another example of now, there are many examples of this, which is that, when our attention wanders, you literally, things that enter your pupils, enter your eyes, and barrel down the optic nerve to the brain aren't consciously perceived. You're blind to them. It's called inattentional blindness, or also change blindness. Like in movies, for example, there's all these continuity errors, like if you've seen Pretty Woman, for example, like there's a classic one in Pretty Woman. I think it's right after Julia Roberts spends the night for the first time. Like the next day, she's eating a croissant, and then the camera cuts away and cuts back, and then it's a pancake now. Then it cuts back again and cuts back, and it's a croissant again. And it's like, so these things are, but every movie has like dozens of these continuity errors, because the way movies are made, they're spliced up and edited together. And there are people who look for them, but most people don't find them, and as far as most audiences are concerned, another great one is in The Godfather, when at the toll booth, remember when he machine guns the car? If you look again, at first it's like all broken, and then it cuts back and the window's fine. So Star Wars has like 58. Like there's so many of them. There's so many. But no one notices them because we're just not paying attention. But it's not that we don't see them. It's like the gorilla thing. It's not like you don't actually see it. And it's not that you don't, on some sense, feel the watch leave your wrist. I mean, you do. It's just that if the signal isn't consciously processed because you're not attending to it, it's as though it never happened. And that's like really fundamental to magic. So in that sense, yeah, and that's also the reason why you shouldn't talk on the cell phone while driving. Not because there's manually difficult. It's the attentional task. It's the cognitive task that hogs your attention. And they've done studies, now that have shown that driving with a cell phone is basically the same as driving drunk, And that a handheld device, far from making you safer, is probably worse because it makes you complacent while still mortgaging your attentional capacities. And in fact, the science also backs that up. So yeah, they do manipulate people's mind, but be very skeptical when they start talking about hypnosis and NLP. A lot of that is patter. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he has mastered hypnosis. I don't know how to do any of that stuff. So, but you have to be careful because a lot of that, is bullshit. Don't.
Yeah, I think that we should do the rest of the questions individually and break for a few minutes and give them a chance to set up.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.